Good evening, welcome to the Glazov gang. I'm still not Jamie Glazov, I'm Josh Brewster filling in for Jamie Glazov. And of course, I'm joined by my very special guest, Mr. Bill Whittle, who you know from PJTV, all sorts of fantastic videos. By the way, I failed to mention, Bill's video, 3.5 days, was viewed by 2.4 million people, and still counting.
And counting.
There you go. Now, Bill, one thing I meant to ask you about as we were talking about you in the first segment, you're a pilot. Yeah. I know you didn't get to go into be a pilot in the Air Force, but you are a pilot and you do fly. I wanted to get your thoughts on your experiences as a pilot, but also I wanted to talk to you a little bit about NASA and great men like Neil Armstrong and Gene Cernan and Buzz Aldrin and the agency today. So tell me about being a pilot and tell me about your feelings about NASA.
Well, it's a 3-hour show right there, but I'll see if I can keep it brief.
Give me the 5-minute version.
I'll give you the 5-minute version. Through a friend of mine and her hard work and my hard work over the course of many years, we were able to buy a little airplane. And it's unlike anything else that most people have seen. It's called a Sky Arrow. And we bought the airplane. I was so in love with it from the beginning because it has a canopy. It's got a stick on the right, doesn't have a wheel, doesn't have a door. It's got a canopy, stick on the right, throttle on the left the way God intended, propellers in the back so I don't have to look at it, and I can go through the air at 80 knots and make jet noises in my headsets and pretend like I'm the fighter pilot I always wanted to be, but I love that little airplane. I find that being a pilot is such a fundamental part of my personality that really everything I do is related to flying. My blog was called Eject, Eject, Eject. I have Afterburner, Firewall, you know. All of these things are basically connected to that. And the amazing thing about flying to me is the combination of incredible discipline and incredible freedom. In other words, you go and you do all the training in advance and you train for failure, you prepare for failure, you're constantly on guard for failure, you do your pre-flight inspection, you do all of these things in advance so that when you get up there, you can have some peace of mind and do amazing, amazing things. It's a tremendous source of discipline, and the thing I like best about flying is I like my relationships not on the ground. I like the in-air relationship with other pilots and air traffic controllers, tower personnel. Because when you're in an airplane, if you make a series of bad mistakes, you're going to die. And it's not like show business where if you make a mistake, you fail upwards. You can get killed doing this. Right. And so everything we do is about professionalism, courtesy, accuracy. And when you talk on the radio to the tower, read everything back, and yes, sir, no, ma'am, yes, sir, everything's very, very, very decent, intelligent, organized, and competent. And that is a very small subset of our society today, so I kind of like moving in that world, especially getting the instrument rating. That's a profoundly disciplined kind of a thing to do. But as far as NASA's concerned, look, I was a space age kid. I saw the Thunderbirds. I was going to fly fighter jets. I was also going to fly space shuttles and command the Mars mission. That's what I was going to do. And NASA, when I was a boy, was doing things that were probably 50, 60, 70 years out of their reach. They really reached into the future and did things in the 60s that they really couldn't even do. Went to the moon on slide rules.
Yeah, I want to interject one thing. Your phone, right? I always say this. Your cell phone has more computer power than all the hundreds of computers that powered the Apollo missions. So who put man on the moon? Man put man on the moon.
Man on the moon with slide rules by and large. Yeah. You can pretty much largely slide rules. There's a great scene in Apollo 13 where the guy's reading some numbers and every single one of the controllers whip out their slide rules. He goes, he's right, he's correct. The guy did it in his head. But put that aside for a second. NASA was breaking boundaries and pushing and pushing and pushing and accomplished miracles in 10 years. And then for 40 years, they did nothing. For 40 years, with the space shuttle, they basically flew the same mission profile that Yuri Gagarin flew on the very first space flight, a low Earth orbit mission. For 40 years, they didn't do anything. Now the shuttles are retired. There's talk about follow-up programs. I'll give you the honest truth, pal. I don't think NASA's ever going to put man into space again. Never, ever. I don't think that they're out of money.
We're hitching a ride to the space station.
To our space station, we're begging the Russians for a ride. And this would be bleak and awful if it weren't for the fact that there are people like SpaceX and X-Corps and Virgin Galactic and a couple of people that are trying to do this privately. And I think that the answer is that it has to be done privately or it's not going to get done because, unfortunately, the entire Apollo program was a race to show the Soviets that we had a better society than they did. And in order to show these top-down, government-run socialists, monolithic society that we're better than they are, we had a top-down, government-run, monolithic space program that was absolutely countered down from the president, or the vice president, really, Johnson, and through the approval of Congress. Apollos 18, 19, and 20 never flew because Congress just decided,
Yeah.
and the space shuttle was completely destroyed from its original very elegant design because Congress and Congress represents the will of the American people.
So the demise of NASA, you think, is related to sort of a central planning, you think?
I think the demise of NASA it was a mistake to put. You can make the case that it needed to be the government to pave the way,
Right.
but if it is a constantly money losing venture, then it's not going to succeed. Nothing that perpetually loses money will ever succeed. This should be something that private enterprise should be doing. And frankly, I've talked about this before. If Americans want a space program, they should be prepared to pay for it. In addition, they should have some plans about that. We'll talk about it.
Listen, this is part of what makes this country great, and I'm a big believer in NASA. I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of Neil Armstrong, Bill, and I cannot believe that flags didn't fly at half-mast when he passed away. He really is truly one of the true heroes of our time.
It is not a difficult argument to make that Neil Armstrong is the most important human being that ever lived.
It's not hard to make that argument. No,
I mean, seriously, let's just take a very simple set of examples. I don't know how many popes there's been, like 460 popes.
Yeah, how many walked on the moon?
There's been 460 popes. There's been 45 presidents of the United States. There have been 12 men that have walked on the moon, and only one of them did it first.
That's right.
He is the first member of the most exclusive club in history. He was a profoundly American guy in terms of being self-motivated, humble and quiet. He simply is. He simply has the greatest claim to historical immortality of any human on the face of the earth, and he utterly retired and utterly, when I say retired, he taught engineering for years, and he simply just didn't play the game. It's very difficult to contrast that with the President of the United States, who essentially does nothing but blow his own horn and has accomplished nothing except for run for this office and succeeded. Now, that's quite an achievement, obviously. But when you look at what Neil Armstrong did in terms of the amount of work and the personal risk he took, and the thing that he actually achieved, and then to have Barack Obama eulogize him by showing a picture of himself looking up at the moon. The best thing we can say about Neil Armstrong is that it inspired Barack Obama to look to the skies. Yeah. That's the best thing that Obama could say about Neil Armstrong. It inspired me to look to the skies.
Yeah, and he sent out a picture of himself looking at the moon. That was the tribute. Now, this is a guy who was 30 seconds from running out of fuel, huge boulders the size of automobiles all around, and he had to land the thing. Listen, Neil Armstrong didn't get his due at the end of his life. That's just my take on things. Let's move on to some more dismal topics like politics, and there are plenty of them. There really is one thing. I want to talk a lot about you, Bill, but there's one thing that's sticking in my craw here, Bill, about conservatives with regard to the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. I mentioned to Dwight Schultz recently, I'm going to mention to you, when the Occupy movement, you've spoken about them, were on the streets, Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi, they were quick to say, we're with you. Okay. Now, the Republicans see the Tea Party asking essentially similar questions, except, it's more to my liking what the Tea Party would prescribe as a remedy to our financial ills. Their fiscal conservatives are on the street. They've committed the crime of being mostly Caucasian, many middle class, but not entirely Caucasian, not entirely middle class. The Republicans don't seem to have any interest in libertarians or Tea Partiers, maybe not even social conservatives anymore. They have this very dressed up, we're going to look good Republicans. We're going to campaign in 5 states and go along with the Karl Rove numbers.
A path to 270.
Do you see where I'm headed with this?
A path to 270, yeah.
You're not going to win by not having a big enough tent for the conservatives. You're the Republican Party, Bill. Take it from there.
The path to 270 and winning elections is to win every state in the union. That's path
correct.
To 270. And so let's look, we can speculate all we want to. The part about conservatism that drew me to conservatism and keeps me grounded daily is the fact that this philosophy is based on seeing things as they are, not as we wish them to be. So let's look at things as they are. We had a moderate running in 2008 against the most liberal man ever, and he lost. We had a moderate running in 2012 against the most liberal ever with a 4-year track record of failure, and he lost. So when did we win? Well, the last 3 times that we won big, because George Bush was half conservative and half not, and he squeaked by in 2000, the closest election ever, and squeaked by in 2004. That kind of Rovian strategy of having to get everything just exactly right. When's the last? What ideological elections have we run on as conservatives? In 2010, we ran a Tea Party-powered attack on Obamacare, and we had the second greatest upset in history. I think we flipped 60 seats, 83 seats, I don't remember. Spectacular.
By embracing the ideology.
By embracing conservative ideology, we went out there and we had a historic landslide victory. The time we did before that we went with an actual conservative philosophy, we only won 49 states. We came within 5,000 votes of winning 50 states and running the table. That would be Ronald Reagan in 1984. And the time we ran ideologically before that was in 1980 when we only won 45 states. So if you look at the evidence on the board, what it tells you is when you run as conservatives, you win the biggest House upset, second biggest House upset in history. You win 49 states and 45 states. And the only reason he won 45 and then 49 was because he won 49 the second time, because people could see just how effective this was.
That's right.
But we have to put this kind of thing away because there's no evidence whatsoever.
That's right.
No, the answer is to become more and more moderate, you see. And this goes to my fundamental feeling now since the 2012 election, which is that really the RNC and all of the leadership of the Republican Party is utterly infected with Stockholm Syndrome. The pop culture has beaten them down so much that they don't believe their own message. They see the Tea Party as actual conservatives who must be repressed because if the American people find out what conservatism is really about, they'll abandon us in droves. And this is their philosophy for winning. Well, we've seen them try it twice and they failed both times. We've got 8 years of Barack Obama to pay for this now. And it's time to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me give you a couple of items that I believe the Republicans never want to discuss, but conservatives do seem to want to discuss, and somehow Republicans never discuss it, so it's never discussed. The borders. It seems to me there are a lot of Republicans out there now who feel, oh, we have to reach out to Latinos, which means we should give everybody amnesty. Now, I think this is nonsense, and this just makes you more Democrat light than anything else. I don't understand why a vigorous defense of the borders, a vigorous defense of American citizenhood, I just don't understand why Republicans seem to be gravitating to the idea that, oh, we should just grant amnesty, then they're going to love us. It didn't happen when Ronald Reagan granted amnesty. It's not going to happen now. Be strong on the borders.
It's Stockholm Syndrome because the people know that the media, the news media, the pop culture, late night comedy, movie stars, Jessica Alba's going to come out and call you a racist. Fine, everybody's going to laugh at you. And so they basically kowtow. The problem is that nobody on our team knows how to construct an argument. Nobody knows how to do it. So here's how you might construct an argument about the borders, just very briefly. First of all, you say, can you imagine a draconian immigration policy where there are armed guards at the border, where if you enter the country, if you say, so much as say one thing about the politics of the country, when you mention anything politically, forget about getting in the streets and protesting, you open your mouth with a political opinion, you're immediately deported. And you go on and on and on, list all this draconian stuff, and you say, this is in fact the actual immigration policy that Mexico has in place right now.
That's right.
Right? This fascist, horrible fascist, racist fascist thing is in place in Mexico right now. You can point out to the fact that the U.S.-Mexico border is the only undefended, unprotected, open border in the world. In the world. Right? So you can say that. You can go on and make case after case after case, but the ultimate argument I think you make in immigration is to say this. People will accuse you of being anti-immigrant. I'm not anti-immigrant. This is a nation of immigrants. We're all immigrants here. But illegal immigration is spitting in the eye of all of those people around the world, not just in Mexico, all of those people who have spent 10 years of their lives filling out forms, $7, $8, $10, $20,000, all the money they have to legally become immigrants. It's a spit in their eye. And I'll close with this.
Oh, please.
I'll close with this. Why do people come to America? They come either for political freedom or for economic opportunities, which means that they're escaping political corruption or political oppression. What that really says is they're escaping lawlessness. Right? They're coming to a country of laws and escaping lawlessness. Now, if the first thing you do when escaping lawlessness is come to this country and break the law, aren't you bringing with you exactly what you're trying to run from? Isn't this the fundamental contradiction at odds here? And isn't the fact that we're going to admit 25 million lawbreakers into this country, what does that say about the law-abiding citizens who have educations, capital, and have filled out the forms and done the right thing to come here the way that everybody else did?
Including Mexican Americans.
Including Mexican Americans.
And by the way, I'll just mention, in this neighborhood, there are tens of thousands of Iranians right here in this neighborhood. Talk to them about how they got here, Bill. Talk to them. How much of a struggle it is to get here legally. But Republicans won't talk about that. Then very quickly, won't talk about preferences. The Republicans won't talk about preferences.
What do you mean preferences?
Affirmative action, quotas, things of this nature, shoving aside Asians in favor of other groups, shutting aside whatever, all this nonsense. And we never, as Republicans, say what a conservative would say to the critics, which is, no, the liberal racists are the racists. We're not the racists.
Bingo.
We want everybody treated equally.
Bingo.
But we don't talk. We won't even open our mouths. We have Stockholm Syndrome.
The thing I learned from my friend Andrew Breitbart is that everything that you run into when you deal with these progressives, you will understand every question they ask you is a trap, and you will understand how to get out of that trap if you understand that everything they do is about unearned moral superiority. Once you hear that dog whistle, once you're tuned to that frequency, you'll learn where the trap is in terms of the question, and you'll learn your way out of the trap. So their unearned moral superiority is to say that affirmative action is something we should do for black people because that shows how much I care and shows how much more advanced I am than you Republican knuckle-dragging savages and so on. Had a discussion with this at Oberlin College, the most liberal college in America. And guy said to me, so you oppose affirmative action? I said, I absolutely do. And he said, well, why do you oppose affirmative action? I said, because I'm not a racist like you are.
Yeah.
What do you mean I'm a racist? I said, you're in favor of a policy that basically says that a black kid can get into a college with a 650 where a white kid needs to get an 800. That is racism. That's telling black people that they're stupider than white people, and I don't believe black people are stupider than white people.
Yeah, it's the liberal racism of lower expectations.
That's why I'm
but
opposed to it.
Republicans can't talk about it.
So this
they
guy,
can't open their mouths.
So this guy says to me, no, it's about society, it's about the culture.
Right.
They don't have as much access. I
Root
said, you're
cause.
wrong, because if it was about the access, we wouldn't be talking about lowering test scores. We'd be talking about things like the United Negro College Fund, which I am 100% in favor of. You couldn't ask for a better program. It's a voluntary program of economic assistance to get people into colleges at the same standards as everybody else. It's racism, flat out racism, and we don't believe in racism. That's why we're opposed to it, because we're not the racists. They are.
PJTV, pjmedia.com. Bill Whittle, you're a great guest, and I really want to thank you very much for appearing on the show. You've been very generous with your opinions, and I want to wish you all the best, as I know that all these programs we're watching now, it's all building to bigger and bigger things. And I have a feeling that we're going to be hearing a lot more from you, and I really appreciate your being here and available to the audience so that we can get to know you a little bit better.
Thanks very much for having me.
All right, there he is, folks. Bill Whittle, pjmedia.com. I'm Josh Brewster. Don't forget Jamie Glazov's new book, High Noon for America. Don't forget that one. Thanks to Jamie Glazov. Thanks very much to David Horowitz and everyone at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Have a good night.